What's up everybody, Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2018 Lexus LC 500H. Huge thanks to Lexus for providing me with this very sweet LC 500H to review for you guys today. So about the LC 500H, well, I reviewed the V8 version last fall, the regular LC 500, and this H version is the hybrid version, which goes down to a V6, but gives you the electric motors as well there. And I just gotta say, these things still look fantastic to me. I was just drooling all over this thing back in the fall when I reviewed the regular LC 500, and it still looks just as good here in this Nightfall Mica color, as they call it. And I just love that these things, they look like concept cars. It's amazing how, Lexus was able to actually incorporate these extreme styling elements into the production version, and it's just really impressive because very few manufacturers make cars that look this cool anymore, and it's just amazing. So anyway, right up front there, you still have that very Lexus grille that's a little more three-dimensional here on the LC, where it kind of curves inward, whereas on other applications it's a little more flat. It looks really cool here, especially with the silver. And then you have those headlights there, which are very small but still very high-tech and advanced looking there, with the LED elements within them. And you also have the little accent lighting that goes to the side and then also goes down, and that looks very cool. And the whole front bumper and everything still looks very sporty. That's the great thing about the hybrid version. It looks just the same as the regular LC 500, aside from a couple of badges, but even the wheels and stuff are all the same. So this one is the touring package, not the sport package. So we still have 20-inch forged wheels, but they're not quite as sporty looking, a little more luxurious with the chrome treatment here, and looks really good there on some Bridgestone touring tires. That it's a really nice large wheel that really fills out the look of this vehicle really well. Coming down to the sides here, I just love how low slung this thing looks. It looks so cool. And then you have a little vent there by the doors. Then you also will see the one hybrid badge there on the rocker panel there that looks really nice as well, and helps to differentiate this a little bit over the V8 version. Going out back there, just more cool looks. Those tail lights are like unlike anything else out there these days. They're like reflective with like a mirror-like finish, but they're full LED, for turn signal and the brake, of course. And I also like how they go off in various directions. It all just looks very futuristic, and just looks so cool. This one also doesn't have the deployable rear spoiler, since it is the touring package. That's only on the sport package. You get that little spoiler there, but it's still, I really like the clean lines of the trunk lid here on the touring trunk. It still looks really nice, yeah, overall I think this thing just looks like $1 million from every single angle. I absolutely love it. Right, so the interior of the Lexus LC 500H, well, it's such a cool place to be, just as cool as the exterior, honestly. So anyway, first things first, sitting down in these seats. Now these are the touring seats, not the sports seats, and these seats are really comfortable though. I mean, they still really have nice beefy bolstering, really great torso support. Thigh support's also pretty good. It has a nice little lip to it that comes up to it, and yeah, just really nice perforated leather seats. They're heated and cooled. One complaint I will say though about the heating and cooling function is there are no buttons to actually turn it on. You have to go into the infotainment screen, and it's a couple of clicks away to turn on the heating or cooling of the seats. And so I like the minimalist nature of this interior, but I would appreciate buttons for that, so you don't have to dig in the infotainment to get those on. But they work very well once they are on, and overall really great seats. Next to the steering wheel here on the LC 500, which is really sweet. I absolutely love it. It's a nice thicker wheel too. Has a really great 9-3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches. Has a few buttons here on it for the cruise control and configuring the gauge display and stuff. And so a really simple and clean looking steering wheel. You also have magnesium paddle shifters that are cool to the touch and are nice and large as well. And they're mounted to the steering wheel, not the steering column, but they're still just really great paddles. And so overall, it's just a great steering wheel to use. Next to the gauges here in the LC 500H, which are again very similar to what you see in other Lexus products. It was originally introduced in the LFA and looks very futuristic here still, even a couple years later. So front and center you have the large digital tachometer, and you have your little digital gauges on the right hand side there, and then on the left of the tachometer as well. And since this is the hybrid version, you get that charge and power indicator there for the electric batteries and all that type of stuff is shown there. And you can go to a more detailed view of that as well by hitting the little back button here, and then it'll actually slide that whole tachometer tachometer over, and then you'll have all your typical other stuff that you see in other Lexuses. It'll display your audio information in there if you want, you know, all that type of stuff can be configured through there. Your additional, you know, fuel economy, things like that. Although also in the middle of the gauge cluster there, right in the middle of the tachometer, you can still scroll through some of your basic trip information, fuel economy, all that type of stuff is in there. And it's a really great setup. And then of course, if you go into the different driving modes, it changes appearances, which is really cool, especially whenever you go up to Sport and Sport Plus, where it has the nice bright white face on it and looks really sporty and exciting. And so overall, just a really cool set of gauges. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, well, before we even get over that area, you have right along the gauge cluster here, you have your two little knobs up here. The left one is for traction control, to turn it off or put it into snow mode. And the right hand side here is how you control those driving modes, which it really is a cool look to it. I just really love that. But anyway, coming over to the rest of the stuff here in the center of the dashboard, you have a nice large, I believe it's a 10-inch display here in the LC500. Looks really good. The nice large widescreen, you know, pretty high resolution graphics. It still is the same basic Lexus infotainment we've been used to for a couple of years here. Unfortunately, does not have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, which is one drawback. Although Lexus seems like they're introducing, you know, CarPlay, at least starting with the new ES, and hopefully it'll transition over to other models as well. So hopefully we'll at least get CarPlay in here for 2019 or 2020 model years possibly. But for 2018 it's absent. And otherwise though, it's pretty good, you know, satellite radio and all that stuff is very easy to get through. Thankfully you do have a dedicated volume knob and a tune rocker over here by the whole control area for this infotainment. The way you control it, by the way, is with this little, almost like a laptop mouse pad type of thing, which is much better than the little actual mouse controller that they had in the past. And I think they're going to this pad instead for future Lexus infotainment systems as well. And I do prefer this a little bit over the controller. A little easier to use, and I overall I really like it. I think it's actually better than the wheel personally. And then you have a couple other shortcuts here in that area. But overall, you know, it's just a nice display. It does all the basics really well. The maps and stuff don't look super high tech or anything, but they again get the job done. And it is nice. It also has the split screen layouts. You can have other things there on the right hand side, and so really, you know, great to have all the information you want right up there and very customizable. Next to that screen, you also see a nice little analog Lexus clock, which is great to see. And I also really like this dashboard treatment. It's really cool, and again, just adds to that concept car type of feeling to it as well. Coming down here, you have just a little bit of rocker switches here for your climate controls, and just, you know, just a few things, and that's it. You know, I mean, you have by the shifter here a button for EV mode and brake hold, and that's it. I mean, it's such a simplistic and again very concept car feeling interior, and I really like they did that. Although you still, like I said, have this little space in front of the shifter that you could easily put some heated and cooled seat controls there, but I'm nitpicking, and overall I still really love the design of this interior. I love the grab handle on the passenger side here, and overall it just looks really cool. As far as store space in the LC500, it's not its strong suit, but like most you know, sports cars and things of this nature, you know, I'd say it's about on average. So you have in the door here a little map pocket. You might be able to fit a small bottle in there, but no actual dedicated bottle cutout or anything. Coming over to the center here, you have one cup holder in front of the controller, which is a good sized cup holder, but then you have this nice large armrest, which is really cool looking, and you press this little button to push it back, and then you'll see what kind of is like another cup holder, but it's just a square opening, and then you have a little rectangular slot next to it. So, you know, not the most secure for holding in a drink, but, you know, should work as a second cup holder there. And then you open this up, it flips over to the left here, and then you'll see, you know, a power outlet, and then two USB jacks and an auxiliary jack in there. And you also have a pretty nice large long space there to fit, you know, sunglasses, wallet, all that type of stuff easily in there. And so that is a good amount of storage space in there. So overall it's not bad. There's also a little net in the passenger footwell. But yeah, you know, not awesome, but for a coupe of this type, I would say it's on par with a lot of the others. Backseat space in the LC500 is also not its strong suit. So, you know, it's usable. I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I can fit. It's not very comfortable. I do have to actually like lean over a little bit because I don't have sufficient headroom to at least sit upright. And then as far as my legs, I can have my legs, you know, straight, but then they're going to be kind of digging into the seat back a little bit. If I, you know, put them to the sides there, then it is a little more comfortable in that position. So I would say if you have a, you know, shorter torso or you're a little bit of a shorter person, you would be able to fit back there, you know, for a little while. You know, and in a pinch it works for someone my size, but I wouldn't want to be back there for more than, you know, probably 15 minutes or so tops. But it is usable, and it's nice there is any kind of backseat at all, since you know, several of the other competitors in this segment don't have a backseat, or the backseats are even smaller. Trunk space in the LC500 is also on the small side. I was kind of expecting a larger trunk whenever I first reviewed the V8 version last year, and it's the same trunk space here for the hybrid version. You know, it's just a very shallow floor. It is a nice wide space, so I think you could probably, you know, squeeze a pair of golf clubs in there, things like that, but it doesn't go very deep. So, you know, anything larger than even like a duffel bag or something is going to be a little bit of a squeeze. You could probably fit some suitcases in there, but again, just not super large ones or anything like that. Beneath the floor, you'll just see some tools for repairing a flat, but there isn't any kind of spare tire, because otherwise, under the floor there, you also have the regular battery for the vehicle. Of course, it has the additional battery packs to the floor and things like that for the hybrid components. But so overall, you know, it's a trunk that you can use for a weekend getaway, but, you know, doing any kind of, you know, long trips that require large amounts of luggage would be tight unless you're willing to use that back seat there, in which case you have, you know, plenty of space to throw stuff back there. All right, so starting to go for a drive. The LC500H here has the cool Lexus key, which is a very nice design to it. It has some metal accents on it here. It has a nice weight as well. And just getting into the LC500 is really cool with, you know, the hidden door handle. So you press the one end of the door handle and then you pull the other end and it opens up, and just a really cool experience. But of course, it's keyless access, push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket and hit the power button you have here on the LC500H. And like any other hybrid, it's a little odd where it says it's on, but you don't hear anything turn on other than the dings here, but no engine actually kicks on most of the time. But then, you know, once it you know, needs a little bit of juice from that engine, then it will kick on. All right, so setting off in the LC500H. Well, I was coasting there in completely in EV mode, and then the gas motor kicked on. That's the first thing you notice about the LC500H, is that you know, it does like to go into that EV mode pretty often, especially once you're up and running. But it is, unless you can force it into the EV mode, and it will stay in purely electric as long as it can. But if you give it even more than like 5 or 10% gas, then it will kick on the engine. It doesn't have a very large amount of juice from the electric motor to do any kind of, you know, higher acceleration, but any kind of coasting, rolling, anything like that, it can usually handle in completely electric mode. Other things to note here, though, about the LC500, visibility is actually quite good for a sporty vehicle like this. You have a nice large windshield, the hood slopes down, so you really don't see it at all. You have nice thin A-pillars as well here, so that's great for seeing around. Nice large side windows with a B-pillar that's way far back there. And view out of the back is also really good as well. Even though you have a little bit of a rake to the windshield, or to the rear window, it's still really easy to see out of a nice large rearview mirror. And so overall, a very easy sporty vehicle to drive. And we're just cruising in normal mode here at, you know, 15 miles an hour. But it is, you know, a nice refined ride. It really isolates you from the outside. You don't really hear much outside, and it really feels very luxurious here so far. But I put it into Sport Plus mode, and let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. Okay, interesting. Listen to that. So it gets up and goes really well. I was so like mesmerized by this weird transmission that kind of threw me off. It has a nice sound to it too. So anyway, lots of technical stuff going on with this powertrain. Sounds good though, doesn't it? So in the LC500H here, what we have is first a 3.5 liter V6 engine that's naturally aspirated. That does 295 horsepower. We also have a total torque output of 348, combined horsepower with the electric motors of 354 horsepower. So that gets this thing up and going 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, which is pretty impressive considering that's only like half a second slower than the V8 version, which has 113 more horsepower. So I think those electric motors really help with that low-end boost to really help this thing to take off. And it was a strange experience though, but it really, you could feel that electric motor kicking in and giving you that juice, is in addition to the, you know, gas engine working along with it to give you the maximum performance. But as we are slowing down here a little bit, the car car goes back into EV mode, even in Sport Plus mode here. You know, whenever it realizes you don't need that gas engine, it turns it off, and so it makes it a very economical vehicle, especially as a daily driver when you're in stop and go and things like that. But that transmission that was so confusing, it's a really weird setup in a very cool and ingenious way, though, I must say. So what it has is it has a CVT that's connected to the 2 electric motors, and so you have the CVT, and then you also have a traditional 4-speed automatic transmission. So those things combined, whenever you're in Sport and Sport Plus mode, it combines to make 10 virtual gears. So it will mimic actual gear points and hold those gears, and so it'll try and mimic the regular V8 version of the LC500 does have a traditional 10-speed automatic, real automatic transmission. So this tries to mimic that experience, and that's kind of the whole theme with the hybrid version, is they wanted to have a very similar experience, an identical look to the V8 version, and be, you know, almost its equal in every way. And so I think they're successful with that. You know, you do have the different gears, but it was still a very odd CVT feeling where it just basically sat at redline and just gave me all it's got. But you know, as we're kind of accelerating a little bit more here, you can feel when it's shifting, you know, with an actual gear, and then there are times where you can kind of feel a CVT being a little iffy, where, you know, the RPMs just kind of hang on a little unnaturally long. But that's the whole point of why they incorporated an actual automatic as well, was to help it feel a little more natural from a start and things like that, while still getting all the efficiency of a CVT. And so it's a really cool solution. I'm going to have to drive this vehicle for a lot longer to get a better idea of how it works in practice and everyday driving and stuff like that. And fortunately, Lexus is providing this vehicle to me for an entire week, and I'm going to be able to go on a little road trip in it as well. And so I'll be having plenty of seat time here to judge, you know, how all this works in the real world. But it's a very fascinating setup. Yeah, I mean, it's also got a nice little growl to it as well in Sport Plus mode here. And even in normal mode, though, you can hear that engine, and I don't know if it's something that's piped in or what, but you do get a nice little burble from the outside as well. So I think it's just, you know, a sport tuned version of this V6, which is a very good sounding engine, and, you know, some of its other applications. But the braking here in the LC500H is definitely a lot more strange than in the, you know, traditional LC500. I think it's the regenerative braking for recharging those batteries is what I'm feeling, because the brake pedal does vary a little bit in its resistance, but I will say it has nice bite right at the top of the pedal there, so you get a nice braking action right as soon as you know, start leaning into the gas or the brake pedal, and overall it you know, does a pretty good job of still slowing you down very quickly. You know, they're very strong feeling brakes. It's just a little bit of an odd sensation, but I think, again, that's something that I can probably get used to here, and something you do come across with other hybrids as well. But as we're coming up to some corners here, let's see how it handles. Back in Sport Plus mode here, nice grabby brakes, like I said, and then it handles pretty well. So it's doing a pretty good job. I think the steering feels a little different than it does in the V8 version. It just seems a little more artificial. I don't really have any feel through the steering wheel. That's the only thing I can complain about. I wish there was a little more feeling there. But otherwise, you know, it's pretty accurate, and it actually feels lighter than it actually is. These weigh about 44.35 for the curb weight, which puts it about 155 pounds heavier than the V8 version because of those, you know, batteries and electric motors and all that stuff. But, you know, I don't think it really feels much heavier, maybe a tiny bit, you know, but it's a very exciting vehicle that really likes to dance, you know, since it's rear-wheel drive. I mean, you know, whenever I put my foot into it and the traction control is lighting up and it's trying to help me because it wants to break these tires loose here. We have two 45 wide Bridgestones up front, and then there are two 75s in the rear. They're 20 inches all around, so they're the Bridgestone Turanzas, I believe. So, you know, not a super sporty tire. I think if you go for the sport package, you do get like Michelin Pilot Super Sports and things like that, which would definitely give you more grip, because I can feel these sliding around a little bit more. But then again, like I said, this is the touring package one, not the sport package, so everything isn't quite as sporty in its feel than it would be if you got the sport package, and so that's just a simple configuration choice. But I will say that even though this is the softer of the LCs, it still handles very, very well, and it still has that innate low center of gravity feeling to it. Another acceleration. Yeah, this thing is quick. And it gets exciting. Like it wants to step out. It has that edge to it still that makes it fun. This reminds me a lot of the V8 version. You don't have the same sounds, and you don't have the same type of sharpness. Not quite as sporty, but it's still very, very similar. And this feels a lot more fun to drive than the BMW i8, which I consider this vehicle's main competitor as far as the hybrid stuff goes. And so, you know, it didn't have much front grip. It only had 215 wide tires on the front of the i8, which I was just amazed by. This has 245, so you have way better grip up front. This thing actually wants to, you know, tuck its nose in and dive into corners. It wants to dance around with that back end, and everything about this just feels a little more dramatic. It has a little more, I don't know, I guess pull from that engine, since it is a much larger engine than what you get in the i8 as far as gas engine stuff goes. And yeah, this thing really loves trying to step out. Definitely want to leave traction control on still, because I know, you know, it doesn't sound like a lot of horsepower, but those electric motors give you that instant torque, which really helps to make this thing feel very strong and punchy. But as we continue to go around some corners here, yeah, it's nice and flat feeling. Throttle response is also razor sharp, which is really awesome. You know, it's a combination of, you have a naturally aspirated engine, which usually means you have fairly good throttle response, but you also have that electric motor. So I mean, as soon as you get into that gas pedal, you have instant response, and it feels great. Yeah, these brakes, the more that I use them, the more I'm getting used to them. They're totally fine, at least you know, whenever you're doing sporty driving. And that's one thing I will say is, you know, the hybrid component doesn't get in the way of a fun driving experience. It's not like it's switching into EV mode when I'm, you know, mid-corner or anything like that. It knows when you're trying to go fast and when you're trying to go crazy, and it will gladly do that for you and not try and, you know, put you into some penalty box eco mode or anything. They just did such a good job, you know, of both LCs. I absolutely adore the V8 version as well, and that would still be my choice, obviously. I love the V8 sound and the additional power, the traditional gearing, but this is still phenomenal even the way it is. Now I'm in manual mode, and let's see how these paddle shifters work. So it's very quick shifts now. Again, they're virtual, and you can kind of feel that it's not actually banging into a gear, but it does kind of hold its RPMs pretty well and does a really good impression of an actual 10-speed. So they did a very good job, and I mean, shifts are immediate. I mean, they're quicker than you know, sometimes even the regular automatics from Lexus. Feels very quick, right up there with any other, the actual, like a GSF, that automatic transmission feels about as quick as this does. So they did a very good job with the speed of these virtual shifts, but it does actually change RPM and gear, you know, so to speak, and so you can drive this around like it's a 10-speed automatic, and the gears are normally spaced out. Like I'm in third gear at 3,500 RPMs doing, you know, 30 miles an hour. So it's, you know, a pretty, you know, normal. It's not like, you know, you have to be in a super high gear all the time or anything. But yeah, so it's actually really fun to use these paddles as well, and again, they just feel great to use, being magnesium and everything. So yeah, I'm really impressed with that as well. But yeah, so the rest of the stuff here, I'm gonna have to you know, actually go on my little road trip and drive this around for a week. You know, I'll come back and give you guys my final, you know, thoughts on the LC, my thoughts on, you know, the stereo, and my fuel economy in the real world here over the course of the week and on the road trip. And I'll come back and give you all that information, and yeah, it should be a fun week. This thing is very sweet. Alright, so I've been driving the LC 500H here for a week now, and man, I've really fallen in love with this car. I love looking at it, I love driving it, and that's rare for a hybrid for me. There's very few hybrids I actually enjoy driving, and this one, the hybrid is so seamless in the way the engine turns off and turns on, and the EV portion is so handy at low speeds that it's just really just a really great combo. And especially with the very futuristic looks of this car, I think it really fits to have the hybrid component. If you commute in, you know, traffic and stuff like that and stop and go, this makes a lot of sense. Or even if you just want an economical, fuel efficient, you know, exotic looking car, there's very few of them out there, and I think this one does it probably better than all of them. It's just, I just really love this thing. I love the driving position. It just really is, you know, it feels small while the car is still pretty big, but it just makes it very easy, you know, as far as visibility goes, to see around and park and, you know, all that type of stuff. It doesn't feel intimidating to drive in any way, and it's just I just really have fallen in love with this thing. And I drove it for almost 1,000 miles, 965 miles so far, because I did a road trip over the Memorial Day weekend to Virginia and back. And so on, a road trip like that, it is such a nice Grand Tourer. Really nice, comfortable ride, actually. This one has the touring package, so it has the less aggressive tires, but it just does not give you any kind of harshness or anything. It does such a good job. And the stereo system is Mark Levinson 13 speaker arrangement in this one, is a really nice sounding stereo. Now, it wasn't mind-blowing or anything, and for a vehicle of this price, I would like something that maybe wowed me a little bit more in the stereo department, but I'm nitpicking here. It's still an excellent stereo. The whole interior is just very nice. But on my road trip, I got a lot of compliments on the looks of this thing. Lots of people also, turning their heads to check it out when I was driving and things like that. I mean, this car definitely stands out and it makes a statement, and it's a very positive one. Everyone that commented on it was commenting positively. Everyone thought it was a really sweet looking car. It's pretty cool that, it just stands out so much, again, while being so economical and so daily drivable. So speaking of the economics of it, the fuel economy over my road trip. So, the road trip was mostly highway stuff, and there was a good amount of stop and go. Thankfully, since this is the hybrid version, the adaptive cruise, which is a full speed adaptive cruise, it comes to a complete stop and will resume for up to, I think, 5 seconds. And after that, you just have to tap the accelerator if you're stopped for more than like 5 or 10 seconds, which isn't a huge deal. And the fact that it, will stop and then start itself again if it's just inching up, that is so nice. I was sitting in I-95 traffic over Memorial Day weekend. And anyone who's done that in the past knows it can be pretty brutal with lots of, long lines and traffic and whatnot. And this thing with the adaptive cruise and the EV mode, I just coasted through it all on purely electric, and it saved a ton of gas with all that. But all told, my fuel economy on the highway was a little over 31. It was like 31.3 mpg, which to me is really impressive. Now, these are rated 35 on the highway, 26 in the city. So, I didn't get quite as high as the claimed highway number, but I think 31 is still very good for, again, a vehicle of this type, a Grand Tourer with plenty of power. I never had any need for more power or anything. It did a really good job. And so, I think 31 is still far better than going to get in, 99% of other vehicles of this class. And so, I think that's really impressive, honestly. City fuel economy. Now, I've just mostly driven this on the highway. I did do a little bit of city driving, stop and go stuff, and then some spirited driving on the back roads like you saw earlier. So for that portion of the drive, I've been averaging about 20 mpg. Now, again, that's just stop and go, and then, aggressive driving. So, the city rating of 26, this is definitely lower than that. But again, I only had a very limited amount of time where I was driving in the city, so it's not a whole lot of miles for a good average. And I think, the longer that I continue to drive this after my road trip on this, in the city here, it just continues to go up and up with the fuel economy. So I have no doubts it would probably easily hit that 26 mark, in normal commuting on a regular basis over a longer range of miles. Speaking of range, though, that's another thing with this vehicle that makes it such a great Grand Tourer is the fuel range in this thing. With a fully topped off tank, I was able to get 508 miles to a tank of gas. So it means very little stopping for gas, at least. And really, that's what makes a great Grand Tourer, is whenever you don't have to stop to fill up every 250, 300 miles. If you can keep going and going and going, that's what to me is a really nice feature for a Grand Tourer like this. And yeah, so overall, I just really could not be more impressed with the 500H here. The pricing of it is the only thing that, it's not going to be affordable for everyone, of course. This one, as tested, is right at $100,000, $100,295 to be exact, and that's just basically that touring package. I think this car looks like $1 million bucks, so $100,000 on looks alone, I think it's worth that price. And then, of course, whenever you factor in the fun to drive character, the very nice polished interior, everything about this, is just a really, really solid car. And of course, it has Lexus Reliability, which is, a huge thing with Lexus. Is, while other exotics 10 years from now will probably have very spotty service records, this thing most likely likely will be very solid in typical Lexus fashion, and you know, should hold its value very well and run for a long time. So anyway, huge thanks once again to Lexus for providing me with the LC500H to review for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts on the LC500H in the comments below. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.